7 people, and the more that as they come trickling in. Anybody, if you would like to pop in your thoughts. Can't hear you, Crystal. Okay, there we go. 7 people, and the more that as they come trickling in. Anybody, if you would like to pop in your thoughts. Can't hear you, Crystal. Okay, there we go. 7 people, and the more that as they come trickling in. Anybody.
Okay.
Zoom. All right, attendees, let's do please a quick tech check. Can you please confirm that you can hear us okay? If you can just pop in the chat, yes or no, that would be awesome, because Zoom is giving us a little bit of a trouble today, so we want to make sure that everything's loud and clear. There's a lot of yeses coming in, amazing, perfect.
Yeah, I think Crystal was going to introduce herself.
Yeah, go ahead, Crystal.
Am I? Yes, sure. I was going to say what I'm excited about, and I'm excited about having these lovely ladies all together, all in the finance space, talking about money. That excites me, like simple. About me, so similar to Rachel, I'm an accountant, chartered accountant by profession, been working in finance for over 10 years, but now I help people with their personal finance, their business finance. I focus on the mind, the behavioral side of it, and helping people kind of overcome themselves and get to where they want to get to. And I also have 2 businesses, Money Intelligence and my BFD, that are also in the finance space. So I'm all about numbers and money and business and property. And yeah, you'll see me getting excited about that.
But yeah, so 2 accountants in the group. So my name's Rachel. I am the founder of a company called Accountant Sheet. So we're a female-led accountancy practice, and I specialise in working with women in business and influencers. So I've written a book called The Tax Guide for Influencers. And yeah, I'm really, really excited just to be around other women super passionate about money.
Awesome.
Amazing. I'm Ellie. So I'm the founder of This Girl Talks Money, which is a platform which I set up to basically help demystify money for millennial women, and to try and open up the conversation about money. I also am a financial content writer, and I have just finished training to be a financial coach as well. So I help women on a individual basis with all sorts of emotional and behavioral issues around money.
Hi. Yeah. I'm Sarah, so I'm an economist, and I'm commercial director of a fintech company. I'm also an entrepreneur, so I have 2 companies. One is around investment and helping health tech companies to get investment, and the other one is an agency working with fintech startups, helping them with their strategy and marketing bits. So yeah, I'm excited to learn from these lovely ladies, because I feel like they're more the number and financial professionals. I'm more on the economic side, but I think it's a really good bunch, and I'm looking forward to have this conversation. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And to attendees, I see that we are already 40 people here. Awesome. Welcome to all of you to the Money Matters workshops of the LMF Network. And we educate people on life skills and provide community and opportunities for primarily millennial women, but of course, we welcome anybody. So this course is for very basics about money. Don't feel intimidated by any of us, or if you think that our experience, especially in finance or accountancy or etc., is something that is given. We have all gone through a journey to get to where we are with our money and our finances. So no question is a bad question, and just feel free to ask as many as you would like. You have a Q&A box in your Zoom, so throughout the workshop, you will be able to put in questions there and even after. And after the workshop, we'll be aiming to answer each and every question. So just really feel free to let go and put all and any questions that you ever had about money in there. So I believe that it is time to start the workshop. I hope that most of the people are already here, and I know that we are already live streaming on YouTube and LinkedIn as well. So there are probably much more people tuning in, which is awesome. So Ellie will be hosting our workshop. She will be talking about budgeting and savings, and after that, you'll be able to talk to all of the lovely ladies about your questions and finances. Cool. So I'll give the torch to Ellie, and let's do the workshop.
Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen with you, just because I've got a few slides which will just kind of help guide through. I think you might need to give me permission.
It's done.
Perfect. So, let me. 2 seconds.
Technology.
I know, it's stressing me out. Where is it? Okay, we're good. So let me go. Okay, so here we go. So this is Money Matters, and this is a workshop on budgeting and saving, which I'm sure you guys all know because that's why you're here. Just a quick introduction. I'm Ellie. I'm the founder of This Girl Talks Money, which, as I mentioned, is a financial education platform primarily aimed at helping millennial women to get much more confident with their money. So this session is going to be all about what budgeting is and how you can budget and save in a way that works well for you and your lifestyle and your goals. So what is a budget? So budgets often get a bit of a bad reputation, and the reason I think we're going to go through in a minute, but effectively a budget is a plan for your money, and you'll see in a lot of different spheres people refer to budgeting sometimes as spending plans because it sounds a bit less restrictive, it sounds less serious, but all it really is having a plan for where your money is going to go. So there are lots of myths about budgeting, and one of the most common, like I mentioned, is that budgeting is really restrictive and that you can't really have any fun with your money if you are budgeting, that budgeting takes all of the enjoyment out of earning money and spending money. How are you ever going to be able to buy, a nice holiday or to buy that coat that you want if you're budgeting? But the reality is very different. And the reality of budgeting is that actually it just gives you a structure to know where your money's going and to allow you to have money ready when you want those purchases. So that's one of the big myths that you often see around budgeting. Another one is that budgeting is only for people that are in financial difficulties, for example, to try and help them to manage their money. But again, that isn't true. And budgeting can be really, really helpful, whatever your financial goal is. It can be a way to help you to pay down debt, but it can also be a way to help you to increase your savings or to find money that you can allocate to investing or put towards your different financial goals. So really, budgeting is just about knowing where your money is going each month. So, how to start budgeting? So there are loads and loads of different methods of budgeting, and everyone is going to have a slightly different way of doing it. I personally don't come from the camp that loves a spreadsheet, but lots of people do. And I can see the accountants smiling over there. Again, the thing is that spreadsheets work for a lot of people, and there is definitely a time and a place for a spreadsheet. And I do use them sometimes with clients if that's what works for the client, if we're trying to do cash flow modeling, that kind of thing. But personally, I don't love a spreadsheet, which is why here I'm going to give you a high level system, which is a way that you can start to think about budgeting. And if you want to take it to the next level and get into more detail, that's when you can look at the different options. So, oh, not there yet. One of the ways that you can increasingly start to budget as well is using apps. So we're now in a world where there are so many different apps which allow you to track your spending in as much or as little detail as you want to. And I am a huge advocate of digital banks, just purely because I think that it's really helpful. It's a really helpful way that you can manage your money. That also you do have to have some input. So you have to decide how you want to manage the money within the apps, and they then provide as much functionality as you need to separate your money and your budget into different spaces. But talking of those different spaces, there are 3 ways that I'm going to encourage you here to start thinking about your money. And the 3 categories are, number 1, essentials. So within this bucket is everything that you have to pay for. So it covers all of your things like housing. It covers all of your utilities, your bills, the things that you don't have a choice really about paying. They're your obligatory payments each month. I also put groceries in here. So your basic food shopping goes into here. And if you're someone who has to drive, for example, for work, then I would say petrol is an essential, that kind of thing. If you get the tube, normally travel. So the things that you have to do as a minimum. That's number 1 category. Number 2 is your wants. So your wants are your discretionary spending. So it's not only things like buying a new book or a magazine each week, it's also like your lifestyle subscriptions. So things like your Netflix are a want, they're not an essential, although I guess at the moment you could probably argue that they are essential to keep you sane, but typically they are going to be a want. So everything that is not a complete essential goes into the wants category. And the 3rd category is future you. So future you is this bucket where it's not only it's things that will help you in the future, that future you will thank you for doing. So debt repayments, which are obligatory often, but I like them to go into the future you category because I think that it's really helpful to see it as something that you're doing to help yourself in the future rather than just another chore. Anything that's going into your savings is also future you, and then any contributions that you're making towards investments, all of that is future you. So you've got your 3 categories of essentials, wants, and future you. So what goes where? I've kind of given you a bit of an outline of how you can start to split things up. But what I can recommend that you do is go through your latest bank statement and label or get 3 different colored highlighters, go through and categorize each line item with one of these 3. And what I would say, there might be some things which you're not quite sure about. Just go back to that point. Is it obligatory? If it is, then it's probably an essential. If it's not, if you could not pay it, even if you really love it, it's probably a want. And there's nothing wrong with wants. That's one thing I really want to emphasize, is that it's really important that you do have those things. And part of the purpose of this system and having a money management system in place is that you can then make sure that you can account for and budget for those things that are really important for you, whether that is your going to the nail salon, whether that's going to the gym that you like, whether it's getting a takeaway every Friday. This all factors into it. It doesn't mean having this system doesn't mean that you can't spend money on those things. It's just about having that knowledge of where your money's going and how much money you're allocating to each category. So once you've got those 3 categories, then it's time to think about spending plan. And the way that this is often kind of put into a system is known as 50, 30, 20. So 50% of your money will, or your income typically will go towards the essentials. 30% will go towards wants, and then 20% will go towards the future you. The big caveat to this is that this was a system that was made up by someone who obviously had their own set of circumstances where this was very viable. If you're living in a big city, then the reality of 50% covering all of your essential payments is quite low. And so the point of this model is not to say that you've got to squish everything into that 50% that's essential. If you're in London, there's a fairly high chance that your rent is more than 50% of your income. And that's a story for another day and a whole load of issues there, but that's the reality. And so this is not about saying, oh, well, I can't use the model. What the model is there to do is to give you a structure where you can then move things around. So if your rent and your bills, all of your essentials pot takes up 60% of your income, that is totally fine. You've then got 40% left. And that 40% is up to you to decide how you want to allocate with your needs and with your wants and the future you. So completely up to you. And it depends on your individual goals. It depends on whether you're focusing on that future you, whether you're focused on living right now and you want to have like fun, so you want to maximize that wants pot. That is the beauty of this, is that it's totally flexible. So you can see how it works for a while, and then you can stop and you can reassess and you can move those numbers around. But it just gives you a high level idea of where you're going to be spending what each month.
Ellie, someone in the chat has asked, when you're going back on your bank statements, how far back, like for what period of time? So 3 months, 6 months, a year?
Yes, great question. So I would typically say 3 months. Otherwise, you're going to be there for a very long time, probably. If you can do 3 months, that is great. 1 month is a good starting point if you don't have all of that data. But yeah, 3 months is an ideal amount of time to go through with those pens and see, and you'll start to see patterns as well. And at that point, you'll then be able to start kind of pulling together what your bigger picture 50, 30, 20 looks like, and how you want to split that. So yeah, as I mentioned, the aim of this is to give you some guidelines. And as I said at the start, if you then decide that you want to keep going into more detail and you want to get onto another level and get into the nitty-gritty, then you can 100% do that. And there are so many people and resources that you can get good budgeting spreadsheets from. But if you're new to budgeting, I would say start here, try this out, and then let's go to the next level. And that's often what I do with people that I'm working with, is we'll start on a high level and then we'll look where we need to adjust and where you need a bit more structure, and you can do that later. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the saving side of things. So we've talked about budgeting and how you can manage what you've got coming in, but there are so many ways that you can maximize what that pot looks like at the end of the month. And one of the big things that this focuses on is that essentials pot. So I think a lot of the time we think that our bills are just our bills and what we have to pay is what it is. But there is a lot of control. There's a lot of spaces where we can actually reduce the amount that we're spending there, which can be really beneficial because, of course, if you're reducing your essentials pot, it means that you're freeing up more money to go into either the future you or into your wants. So I'm just going to run through a few kind of simple tips that I have that you can use to start trying to save a bit more money. So number one is to Marie Kondo your money. So prioritize spending that brings you joy. And this sounds really simple, but sometimes I think it really isn't in practice. And a perfect example of this is a client that I was working with earlier today. We were talking about takeaways and the fact that for her, she spends a huge amount of money on takeaways, but she doesn't really get any joy out of it. She doesn't enjoy it. She does it because it's easy and it's convenient. And so one of the things that we went through were ideas for how we can start to curb that temptation. Because if it's not bringing joy, but it's costing a lot of money, it means that you're missing out on other areas of spending that could be bringing you more joy. It's not simply about saying, don't spend the money. It's about where do you want to allocate that spending? And we came up with some different ideas as to what you could do instead. So things like having some food in your freezer. It sounds so simple, but if you have some really quick, simple food that you can just chuck in the oven if you're tired, it will take away that need or that urge to order a Deliveroo. Similarly, cutting out mindless spending. So again, we automate so much of what we do. I just said automate there, but that's a different point. But we do things on autopilot. So we will go to the shop and there are items that we will pick up. We'll go out, we'll see a coffee shop. We'll just think, okay, I'm going to go and get coffee. We don't really think it through a lot of the time. We don't ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. And so much of the time, it's mindless. There's no real engagement with that spending. And so what I would encourage you to do is to ask yourself when you're spending money, like, why am I spending this? And again, it's not to try and stop you spending money, but it's just to check in with yourself and to think, you know, am I doing this for the right reasons? Or is this just autopilot? Am I doing this because it's what I do? Am I going to get a benefit out of this? Am I going to enjoy it? Is it going to add something? Do I need to spend this money? Because a lot of the time it's just a case that you need to buy food. But if it's, you know, you've got food at home and you're wandering around your local shop and you're like, oh, I could buy a sandwich for lunch, but you know you've got the ingredients at home, just ask yourself, like, why am I buying this? Like, what is it giving me here? And just getting into a habit of asking yourself those questions can really, really help you to cut out that mindless spending and be a bit more intentional about where you spend your money. Number 3 is automating your finances. So this is without doubt one of the easiest ways to make sure that you don't miss any payments and that all of your money goes where it's meant to be. So whether it's on payday or whether it's on a separate day, then you can set up your money to do it, to move where it's meant to go. So the way that we do it in my house is that it's basically set up so all of our bills money is in one place and all of those direct debits get pulled out on the right day, but on payday all of that money from our account is moved into the bills pot. So that's our automation. And also the same happens for for saving and investing. It all goes and then it's pulled from its individual places. So when it comes to actually paying the bills, there's no manual work involved. The only manual part is A, setting it up in the first place, and then B, moving the money on payday into the right places so that all of the automation can take place. And there are so many benefits to this, but the main one is that if you take out the money and move it from where you get paid straight away and put it into a separate pot, you know that it's not there to spend freely. What happens a lot of time, I see it time and time again, is that if all of your money is in one place, then it's so tempting to just spend it because you can see it. And then you might get down the line later in the month and you've forgotten that there's a bill that's coming out and you've already spent that money. So the more that you can automate and separate your finances, the easier it will become for you to manage it. So that is number 3. Number 4 is one of my favorites, is subscriptions. So subscriptions services, there's a reason why they're so popular. And if any of you have got your Netflix, your Amazon Prime, your Spotify's, you will know that they just tick in the background. They just keep on going, and you never really think about them. The danger is that you sign up for some and you then forget about them, and you will be very lucky if they will remind you that your subscription is still running. Maybe they'll do it once in a year, but by that point, like, you've already not used it for 8 months and you've probably spent quite a lot of money. So watch out for subscriptions. Again, when you're going through your bank statement, if you're doing your audit and looking for your essentials, your wants and your future you, look out for subscriptions here. Maybe put a star by them and see which ones you're using, because the amount of time you can find subscriptions that you don't use that are just going, and it's never big amounts of money. It's normally like £5-6, but that adds up. So look for those and make sure that if you do sign up for anything on free trials, for example, that you cancel. You set a reminder for when the free trial is going to run out and you cancel it in advance if you're not going to use it. Number 5 is about setting yourself small targets. So I am all for things that make you more motivated when it comes to money, because a lot of the time it can seem like a real chore, and money is not an area where you can make really quick progress a lot of the time. It is a long game. And I think that one of the ways that you can really help yourself to stay motivated is by setting small targets. So whether it's simply a target to go and buy your lunch out one day less a week, or whether it's to every time you buy a coffee to add £3 to your savings pot, just set yourself little targets. Don't try and focus on the end goal, because that is normally what ends up tripping people up. So try focusing on the smaller goals, which will get you to the bigger goals, because you might have heard of the SMART acronym about making your goals sustainable and measurable, and they have to be attainable. Attainable is the one that I always go back to, because otherwise you're just setting yourself up to be disappointed. Make them attainable, and attainable for me is something that you can see yourself getting towards in a realistic amount of time. So if you've got a savings goal of £1,000, break it down into what are you going to save each month, and you will find it much more motivating to get there. And number 6 is an emergency fund. And this one, I'm going to kind of just go out there. A lot of people will say you need to have 3 to 6 months of emergency fund, but most of the people saying that are people that have that already in their bank account. And the reality is, having 3 to 6 months of expenses is a lot of money, and for a lot of people that is not doable, and that will take years and years and years. So what I would say is try and aim for 1 month first of all. Like, just aim for a month, because that is like your starting point. Don't again try and save 6 months worth of living expenses straight away if you're starting with £100. Look at what your absolute essentials are, and then start saving for a month. And once you've got there, you can reassess, look at where you're at, and start building. Because I think that often when it comes to emergency funds, people forget as well that what you need is going to depend on everyone's individual circumstances. So of course, the more money that you have in saving, the better, but don't try and run before you can walk. If you don't have any backup savings, then start with aiming to save whatever you need to cover your absolute essentials for a month, and you'll be in a good place to start building. So that was kind of a very feels like a very quick budgeting and saving whistle-stop tour, but hopefully there was lots of useful information in there, and I know there's some questions. So thank you so much for listening, and I am sure that we are going to get into a lot more of the details and the questions in a second.
Thank you, Ellie. That was definitely great. And it's indeed a very quick rundown of budgeting and savings. We know, all of us know that this is a massive topic, even individually. But this is the perfect place to kind of ask your questions and come in and just ask us anything in these topics, and we'll try to give you a good answer. And I see that we already have a couple of questions here. So let's start with the first one, maybe. Let's answer it live. Is this a myth that digital banks impact your credit rating? Ladies, does any of you have any intel about this? I'm also curious as a digital bank user.
Yeah, I can jump in. I'm sure everyone's probably got something to contribute on this one. So there's like a lot of myths surrounding credit ratings and credit scores, and I really think that they should like start teaching this in schools, because no one teaches you basic finance in schools. What is a credit rating? So a credit rating is basically an indication of how a lender would assess you and your likelihood to spend and use credit. So the best way to build a really accurate, strong credit score is to give the banks data. So use transactions. So banks will be able to assess you on how likely you are to spend and utilize that money if your history and your track record is you spending and utilizing money. So if you take out a credit card and you decide to just buy fuel on it to build up some transactions and then pay that by direct debit each month, you're building up a record of taking out small amounts of debt, so paying for your fuel on a credit card, and then each month you're showing the bank, I can take out some debt and pay it off by direct debit each month. From your point of view, you're not spending anymore, you're just creating and building more transactions to educate banks on, I'm a good lender, I'm a viable lender, please lend me more money. Digital banks are no more likely to give you a bad credit score than anyone else. That is a myth. But I think just really understanding what a credit score is, like everybody has a credit score, so it's not a bad thing, and it's literally a rating, so everybody falls on the spectrum at some point. And it's important to know that it's your past and an indication of your future likelihood to spend and borrow money. So hopefully that's answered the question.
Thank you. That's definitely a great answer. Anybody has anything to add to specifically this question about digital banks and credit ratings?
Maybe a bit around credit scores. And I mean, it can be a challenge for many entrepreneurs, actually, and also those who rent an apartment. And then one way you can actually help to increase your credit rating. So there are some solutions around giving more information to the bank. So they are working on continuously coming up with new solutions, especially around open banking, to give more information about your previous spending, your previous places you live, just to have a better picture of you and your spendings. Because being a young person, even an entrepreneur with maybe a not so stable income, is not helpful. So yeah, so you can just check out some of these solutions that are out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Shara. Just for everybody's information, we are planning Money Matters is a series, as I think many of you know, and the last session on the 5th of December will be all about credit scores. So there will be more than an hour of just talking about this topic, about what makes up your credit score, how is it calculated, why is it good for you, why should you pay attention to it, and how to pay attention to it. So just feel free to hit that up, and then we'll dive into very deeply into this subject and make sure that all of your queries are answered on this. Thank you so much. We have another question which is very interesting. When we look at the Ellie's categorization of expenses for budgeting with essentials, wants, and nice to haves, then where does insurance go into? Sorry, future you. Where does insurance go into in these categories?
So I would put insurance into essentials, because if it's something which you have to pay contractually, so also things like phone bills, just things that you're contractually obliged to pay on a monthly basis, I would put them into that category.
Can I jump in on this one? I think it largely depends on the type of insurance as well, because if you think of something like critical illness, that might fall into, if we think of Ellie's categories, that may fall into future you, because it's for later in life, ideally, if something was to happen. Or it could also fall into wants, depending on what you're insuring. So like your mobile, I think it depends on back to your goals and what your vision is for your life. You know, where do you prioritize that type of spend? So again, the categories and how you want to allocate your money is highly dependent on what you're planning for the rest of your life. And if you're really, I don't know, really focused on saving for, say, a deposit or something, you may not prioritize certain things. Like if you're considering mobile insurance, maybe that's not important. And if your phone does break, you could get I don't know if I'm too old to show my age here, a Nokia 3210 or something, a really old phone. And that's fine just to have that to tick over, because you want to put all money towards saving for a deposit. So it depends on what's a priority to you as to where that would sit. And I think in all of this, when I work with people, I start with getting people to think about their wants, their needs, their goals, what aligns well with them, what's their dreams, and then your budget and your numbers and how you allocate your money kind of falls out quite easily, because then you know yourself a bit better. So that's up to you, Emma.
Awesome. Thank you so much. In the meanwhile, let me just quickly pop this up on the shared screen so that in case people have specific questions to one of you, they can address you, of course. Thank you. Great question. So another question in terms of these categories of essentials, wants, and future you. Where does gym go into? Because I also see this something that could be any of the three categories. So where would you put gym and health expenses?
I mean, I think it's the same answer really, in the sense that it's totally dependent on where it goes in your order of priorities. So for me, my gym is my biggest non-essential expense, is how I see it, because if worst came to worst, that is where I could cut it, and it would be very upsetting, but it could go if I needed to reallocate that money. It's not something that I absolutely have to spend money on. That being said, it's at the top of my list of wants, so it will always come first in my wants, and then other things I will compromise instead of that. But again, it totally depends on you, and if it really is an essential for you and a non-negotiable, then you can put it into your essentials. Equally, if it's something that you want to view as part of like your future, then you can move it into future you. But that's kind of where I put it typically.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody who would like to add an insight to gym or any other expenses and the categorization? This is a clear answer, I think. Let's move on. Can we recommend a few digital banks for a beginner?
So I'm a huge advocate for Starling, which you'll love to hear is a female-led bank. So they've got a female founder too. So Starling is amazing. It's very similar to Monzo, if you've heard of Monzo as well. They're sort of direct competitors with each other. It's super straightforward. You can set up a bank account with either of them within 24 hours. They do all of the identity checks online over your phone. So in order to verify it's you, you'll send them a picture of your passport, your driving license, and they will send you a unique code that you have to say into the camera to prove that it's you. Again, if you've got a business, you can also set up a business bank account within 48 hours with them as well. And you can set up different spaces, which is amazing. And I'm sure like Ellie and Crystal use it with a lot of their clients too. So if you have goals, like long-term goals, or if you want like 1 month savings, if you like want different months or different amounts of money, you can set up different spaces as different goals, and you can go on Pinterest and get a good picture of the new bathroom that you want for your house and like save it. So every morning when you open your bank account, you're looking, and it's like setting up affirmations and visualizations so that every time you open your bank account to try and spend some money, your spaces are waving at you like, don't spend it, you do not need it, put some money in here too. You can also set up lots of rules with them, so you can do round up. So every time you do get a coffee, you can round up every single transaction and choose to put that rounding into a separate pot. But I think again, coming into the Christmas period, it's really important to like not let spending escalate. So if at the beginning of the year you decided, right, I'm only going to spend £500 at Christmas and I'm going to divide that by 12 and put that aside every month, you can have a space set up so that at the beginning of November, you've got your Christmas budget and you can move money out to keep track of how much you're spending. So sorry, that was a really long answer to a very simple question. I would say Starling and Monzo are really, really good, strong digital banks that can provide you with a lot of analysis. Like you can code your expenditure. So you could literally code your expenditure into like essentials, wants, and future. Or you can code it into like utilities, house, pets to track where your money is going. So again, like you wouldn't even have to need a highlighter. You could just categorize your expenditure and it would tell you where your money's going to.
Awesome, thank you. Please go ahead with any other favorite banks or favorite functions in digital banks.
Dare I say Rachel works for Starling Bank? She's very enthusiastic there.
Yeah, I'm not sponsored by Starling.
I think I'd add in Money Dashboard. I love it. I've had it for a while. I haven't used the desktop version, but I know they have one. So for people who want to use it on their mobile and use it on the desktop as well, that's just another one that's pretty handy and as nifty as Starling. Don't know if you've got any others that are really great.
A really good hack as well is, I don't know how many people have joint accounts, but like we have a joint account and you can set it up so that every time you spend money, it tells the other person that you've spent money. So it's actually a very good deterrent of not spending money.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I would say very much the same one. So I use both. I have Monzo, 2 Monzo accounts and a Starling account. I think a lot of it comes down to personal preference. Like I have a preference over them, just in terms of user experience, but they both are great options. I guess the other things I would say to think about doing. So there are a couple of apps which help you to save. So Plum is one which automates your saving, and it's so clever. It uses these super complex algorithms, and basically it takes money that it calculates that you can afford to put into a savings account. It pulls it from your account, and it looks at your spending behavior and analyzes it to work out those amounts of money. And it's just very clever. And so a lot of people use that, and I've always heard very positive things about that as well, as a kind of extra way to just top up your savings. Oh, did someone just say, yeah, what's the name? Plum, yeah. I think it's with Plum if you're looking for it.
I'll link it very shortly. There's after I'll try to, because I'm sharing the screen as well. There is also Chip, which does very, very similar things. Like I use that one. It's my second favorite app. So I think any of these savings apps work fantastically, and they work wonders. They steal away from me £8 and £7, and then I look at it and I have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Awesome. Any other finance apps that you would like to recommend, ladies? I think this is incredibly useful, to have something right on your phone that helps you with budgeting and saving. So if you have any other app in mind, then we are very, very happy to recommend it.
I think Emma's another one that's popped up. There are so many. I went through a phase of just downloading loads and just seeing which ones I liked, and Money Dashboard was my favorite, but try them out, see which tickles your fancy. Really.
I mean, also there are some that helps you with investment. So, I mean, it's nice to have savings, but it's not so nice when inflation eats it away. So then, for example, Dozens is a one that automates investments. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's the best, but given that the topic of today is not investments, then just trying to go for an easy solution where you open an investment account right away with your bank account, which is not just an emergency pot, but something that is actually actively investing, maybe in funds or some of the commodities.
Awesome. By the way, us as LMF Network, we have a list of finance applications which we keep on refreshing every time we have these Money Matter sessions. So all of the attendees, you will get that spreadsheet, and you will see all of the apps there. So you will be able to peruse and download any of them. None of them are something that we refer specifically. So you will find all of the apps there that are kind of on the market. and you will see if this is something that we have personally tried, but otherwise, it's not something that we refer one because we are partnering with them or something. So all the advice that you get is very impartial. We are also going to send you, by the way, a workbook where you will get a bunch of exercises in regards to budgeting and saving. So just so that you have something to look forward to in the coming days. Awesome. Let's take the next question. So we have another one about credit rating. I think we can about, is it true looking at your credit rating decreases your credit rating? Can we give a short answer to this? And then of course on the credit building workshop we'll dive into it much deeper.
The short answer is no.
There we go. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so it will appear on your credit history, but it doesn't affect your score. So there's something called soft checks and hard checks. So depending on who's checking, it will appear on your record. It will never increase or decrease your score. That's my short answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have a next question, which is, would you recommend to scrap accounts with standard banks and switch to digital banks, or keep both?
I jump in here. No. There are plenty of standard banks that offer lots of incentives for spending using your debit card or just paying direct debits from your accounts, and you can actually add up to quite a nice bit of money just from spending regular money that you would anyway. So unless your digital bank is doing better, I don't see why you can't have both. I mean, personally, people are often surprised. I have about 7 banks because I literally recycle my money through my accounts to take advantage of all the different savings I can get from various accounts, as well as investing. So you do have to be a bit savvy here and identify what makes sense to put money to different bank accounts. And it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but you could be really smart. And some standard banks still offer some, I can't say great rates, but good enough for what's out there. Don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I would say I think it really depends on personal preference a lot of the time, because I think it depends how much time you want to spend managing your money and how simple you want it to be. And I have very much narrowed down the amount of accounts that I use, but I also have to factor in business accounts and all of that. It can very quickly spiral, and you can forget about what you've got where, and then you also have credit on top of that. And I think working out a way that works for you to manage your money is so key. And I don't think that there's well, I think we probably all agree, there's not a right way as such. It's just, it has to work for you and be sustainable for you.
Just maybe one thing to add is make sure you check any associated fees with bank accounts, different accounts, because you might have great deals, but your fees might eat it up in traditional high street banks. So just watch out for that.
Awesome. And I think the next question is kind of tying into this topic around bank accounts. So what are the current good savings account that you can recommend? So should we save in a current account? Should we save in a savings account? If yes, which one? And what are your kind of recommendations in general? I guess this also has to tie in with what our saving goals are, I suppose. I don't know. You tell me. Please jump in.
Yeah, I think identifying what your goal is more important. You should answer that question first before you start looking for an account, because if your saving goal is less than 12 months, keeping it in a current account isn't going to disadvantage you any more than it would be. You're just going to create more transactions, moving it into an ISA and moving it back out again within 12 months. You're not going to gain the benefit. But if your saving goal is more than 12 months, you can really utilize maybe the tax-free interest that you could gain in an ISA, or I'm sure Sarah knows way more about this than me, but different investment pots and getting much better interest rates if your saving goal is much more long term. By actually moving that money permanently, you get much higher interest rates. But if your goal is going to be achievable within 12 months, just setting up a separate space within your online banking would gain you exactly the same.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and I would see maybe a mix of the two things. So always have your savings, part of it in cash. One would recommend 10-20% in cash, and the rest, I mean, just start now to invest. I would say no matter how old are you, just start now. I think there was even a question about, should I start a saving account for my 2-year-old toddler? Yeah, absolutely. And go wide. Be very risk seeking with a 2-year-old, because they have a lot of time to correct your mistakes. Be a bit more conservative on your own savings, obviously. So it's a good mix. But and ISA account is definitely a good option. And nowadays that we have more options than ever, and it's easier than ever. So you have plenty of low fee options, very user-friendly options that you can start with. Just make sure you educate yourself around that topic a bit. And honestly, it's worth it, and it takes less time than getting a driving license. So just go ahead and read a book or two, watch a few YouTube videos, or join more LMF events where we talk about investment.
In 2 weeks, there's an event on investing. Don't forget to come back.
Yeah, and I think, Ellie, maybe you had the point that it should be definitely part of education, the basic finances, and I think we really lack that in our education systems. Yeah.
Cool. We'll be so. My other question is in terms of this, which is, I think, a little bit connected. So would you recommend using a separate account just so you have it more difficult to kind of tap back into your savings? Because I heard that recommended a lot of times, like if the savings move out of your account, you're less likely to kind of go back at the end of the month and put the money back to towards your spending. Is it something that you would recommend as a good practice, or is it just unnecessary?
I think, again, it's just personal preference. It's like dieting. How do you stop going into the cupboard to get the digestives when you know they're there? Like, everyone's different. You can either sit on your hands or throw them away. And actually, some people are better at doing one than the other. And you still know it's there. It's just a way of stopping yourself. So I think it is personal preference.
Cool.
I think on that, I mean, I was thinking of someone I was working with the other day. They had trouble kind of not spending what was supposed to be their saving because they had it all in one bank account. So I think depending on how, you see yourself behaving, if you are kind of struggling to keep control of that, then a separate account might help. And also, I think maybe, like Ellie mentioned earlier, an emergency fund, and have that as well, which would be for you to dip in an emergency, or, something's come up that you have to spend extra money than you originally planned in your budget. So you're not spending your savings and keeping those separate. So your emergency fund is not your savings. That's two separate things. And maybe thinking of it that way might help you if you're struggling to kind of manage.
Awesome. We have a poll in progress. So anybody who's here, then feel free to pop in your answers, whether you feel confident about your savings, emergency funds, and so on. And in the meanwhile, we're going to get started on our next question, which I think is a bit more about investing, but if we have a short answer, then we are, of course, more than happy to give it, which is, how can I save and where can I save better for my child's future? Just putting £50 each month, where would you physically put that money?
Sorry, I was just reading the question again.
Yeah. Feel free to read through. Feel free to read through the question.
So I think this is really interesting because it's very clearly a very long-term goal. Putting £50 away a month, firstly, is amazing, and secondly, because this is a long-term goal, so it's not going to be something that you're going to dip into. You could then start to look at long-term saving options like lifetime cash ISAs, where a £4,000 annual allowance, which you can save £50 a month, because it's a lifetime cash ISA. It means that the government will top it up by 25%, and any interest you earn on it is tax-free. There is like a spoiler, but you have to be between 18 and 39 to open one of those, but you can open that on your child's behalf and then transfer that later on. But this is really cool because we're talking about a very long-term saving option, so you can find very low risk, I'm sure Sarah will be like, invest it. But if it was very low risk and not keen on it like actually investing somewhere else, this is a very safe option where the funds are available at any time, but it's a long-term option for you.
Cool. So where would you guys recommend to, obviously without any unbiased products or bank recommendations, I suppose, putting money away for such long-term goals?
Go on, Sarah.
I mean, it's really country specific, so I don't know. I think you should just do your research and see what. I mean, it would be far to recommend now your products, but really just try to look up some of the blogs and recommendations in your country, because, for example, not every country has a similar construction like the ISA account. But that's actually a really good one. And yeah, £50 is just really great. I mean, no money is small money. If you think about compound interest, Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world. So he knew something. And yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any other like products that you would recommend, or I don't know?
I think we'll have a look into this, because I think this topic is much closer to the investment section, and this will be definitely something that we'll put on the agenda for 2 weeks from now. So don't forget to come back and we'll give a much more in-depth answer to this question. And we have another question again about Monzo or styling. So let's just do a quick round and just tell us your favorite in one word, so that we can give a recommendation, and then of course people can judge by themselves. So Crystal, if you would like to start.
I'd say styling.
Sarah.
I have Monzo for personal and styling for business. So this is the best.
Awesome. Yeah. Rachel.
I'm not sponsored, but it is styling.
Ellie.
I'm the same. So I have Monzo for personal and joint, and then I have styling for business, but I do prefer Monzo.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I think this is really insightful. Cool. And we have a little bit off-topic question, which we all, of course, welcome. Any good reading recommendations on the psychology of spending? I have been using a budget for a while, and I use Monzo and Save with Chip, but I definitely am an emotional impulse spender, and I don't save as quickly as I would like to. Often dip into savings for superficial purchases. So I think there's two parts of this question: is how to avoid impulse spending and kind of stick to that budget and help and save more, and the other part of any recommended reading that you can, I think, you know, we can go further than reading, but like courses, YouTube videos, Instagram accounts. So feel free to just give helpful recommendations to get that mindset right.
Gosh. So I guess there's a lot you can do, but there's also it depends how much help you need to tackle these kind of mindset issues. I would say a really good place to start is there's a book called Real Life Money, who the author is actually one of my friends, but Claire is behind My Frugal Year, which is a very big Instagram account. And she wrote the book, and it's a lot about the psychological spending and the emotional side of spending, and helping you to deal with a lot of those kind of triggers that come up and start the emotional spending. So that is called Real Life Money. I would very much recommend that as a starting point. And the other book that I love is called Open Up: How to Talk About Money, or How Talking About Money Will Change Your Life, by Alex Holder, who's a financial journalist. And that is also really good and talks a lot about the psychology of why people find it so difficult to talk about money.
Cool. If you don't mind putting that in the chat as well, just so we have a paper trail. So if you guys recommend anything like that, would be great, so that we can people can come back and search for it. please, if anybody else would like to attack this question, please let's go ahead about not spending less money, reducing an impulse spending, and recommended reading for money mindset.
I think impulse spending is really interesting, and like I used to be really bad as a teenager, and I literally had to give my card to someone and say like, give this to me, and that's my house is burning down. And that sounds really dramatic, but like until it's almost like going cold turkey, like until you need to ease yourself into it. And I literally I withdrew in cash. I worked out how much I needed, and I worked out my essentials, and I withdrew that in cash, and everything else was direct debit. I gave my debit card away, and within a month I was just being able to like see it work successfully is quite often enough to break the cycle. And to make you stop and think. So it's not dramatic, like do what you do to break it. There's two really, really good books on money mindset. They both actually contain swear words. I don't think I'm allowed to say them on here because we're live streaming to YouTube, but I will post them on my Instagram stories. They both actually contain 2 different swear words. So I'll put them on my Instagram stories. So if you want to come over and see my sweary books, you can do that too.
Now I'm very, very intrigued. I'll definitely come over. Swearing and books and money is like my favorite things. All right. Crystal, I saw that you were eager to answer this question.
Sorry, Crystal, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. It's okay. It's funny because I think I know the books you're talking about, and I was going to recommend the same, and I was like, I can't say that, but okay. I think with the whole impulse spending and emotional aspect of this question, again, when I work with people, I get them to dive deep into why, their thoughts, their feelings, and spend a bit of time understanding you. We're all different, we're all unique, we all have our own story as to why we are the way we are. So if we're impulse spending it, is it because you're sad or is it because you're happy? Everyone's completely different as to when and why they spend like that, and other kind of traits that you might have that are not as attractive or not keeping you in line with the goal you're trying to achieve. So I think for you, Julia, maybe just have a think about, take some time and keep a record of what you're doing, impulse spending and any other things, and then dig and try to think, okay, why do I do this? Is it to make me feel better? Why do I need to do that? And then along that journey, you want to replace that action with something else that's in line with your goal. So along with that, you need to think about what goal you're trying to achieve, or what do you want out of life? What do you want for your money? And then replace that negative habit with a positive one, and then reward yourself for doing that good habit. So a bit like what Ellie was talking about earlier, you have to treat yourself, you have to feel good along this journey. You can't, a budget is not there to make your life really dry. You still can have fun with it. So replace the bad habit with a positive habit, and then reward yourself. So it's a bit of thinking, a bit of self-work there. So, money, when we talk about money, it's not just about do this, do that, as in set up a budget, don't spend, set up a bank account. You've kind of got to work on yourself as well, and then you'll get there.
Yeah, I think for so many people, like as human beings, we're not in control, or we don't feel like we're in control of many things, and by spending on impulse, it's a way of feeling in control. So if you're stressed or you're anxious, you're like, oh, what can I do? Like you can spend, whereas actually being able to like put things in place, the ultimate control is having more money and being in control of how much money you have. So by doing it like rather than day by day and then looking at it month on month, like the ultimate control is controlling your money rather than spending it. I think that's really important.
And just, sorry, a last bit, I just thought to add on off the back of that, you saying that, and just back to Rachel, your example about, I think you said you gave your card to somebody else. And just if you understand your mind, you've got 2 sides, you've got the automatic and the cognitive, which is one is controlled, one is automatic and is based on impulse and emotion, and it's just you don't think about it, and that's what's happening here. And you want to get the other side working ideally, or you set up a system that takes that control away from you, so your brain doesn't have to work as hard. So like you said, the card wasn't available for you to spend, so then you can't spend it, so that hinders that bad behavior. But yeah, you can do it.
Shara, if you have, Sarah, do you have any tips or books to add for impulse spending and money mindset?
No, I think that the girls mentioned really good books. One, maybe a podcast I could add, then it would be awesome. Money Clinic by Claire Barrett. It's a Financial Times production, really smart. very plain English. I really enjoy it, and she's great, talking about investment money, savings, and property, and so life stuff.
Cool, thank you.
We'll just pop that in the chat.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. I just have one small tip with impulse spending, because I also used to have a huge problem with it. So nowadays what I do, which for me works well, it's quite simple. Like a lot of times I just wait a day before I spend. So even if I like something, but it's, you know, a little bit out of my budget, or even if it's in my budget, but it's a bit more expensive, I just wait 24 hours and kind of see if I really want it. And if I really want it, I go back for it. But if no, then that's it. I saved that money effectively. So there's just a small tip from my side that helped tremendously with this. Perfect, thank you. We have another question yet, which is, how do you know what is a great savings account? What do you judge a savings account on? Is it interest rate? Any other factors that are in play?
I mean, I guess it depends again on what your goal is. Ultimately, what you want out of a savings account will depend on your goal. If you want access to your money, you don't want a account which is going to penalize you or charge you for accessing your money. And vice versa, you know, if you don't need to access your money, you can look for accounts which offer better rates, but they will also offer those rates because you have to put your money away for a certain amount of time. I think, yeah, it totally depends on what your goal is. That there's not just a great savings account.
Yeah, and I think I'll jump in on this as well. I think it depends on the type of account you open. You know, some accounts offer 3%, 1%. It depends on whether they require you to have a current account as well to have that savings account. Like First Direct, you have to have a current account to have their savings account, but with that savings account, you have to pay a certain amount in every month to get that savings, which is great. It's a really attractive rate, you know, for what's on the market, but that money is tied up for a year. Or, you know, a savings account that your money is, you know, you can withdraw it at any time. It's easy to access. Those savings rates might be much lower. So it depends on what you need and whether it's an emergency fund that you're trying to save up for or something more long term. Obviously, we have ISAs, which are again different. So again, it depends on what you need to save. But if you can take advantage of the higher paying savings accounts, of course, and think about maybe splitting your savings up into different pots and maybe have some in an account that you can't touch for a year and get as much as you can, some in a easier access, yeah, etc.
Awesome, thank you so much. Of course, if you have any other questions, guys, or you feel like you haven't answered, or you just don't want to discuss this in public, then you can always send us an email, and you have all of our Instagram accounts in the chat as well. So you are very welcome to send us a DM, and we'll try to answer your questions as best as we can. And the last question we have from our panelists: how many bank accounts do you recommend for people to have? Obviously, this is also based on personal preference and choice. So if you can all just give us a quick answer on this, a ballpark number on the amount of bank accounts that are recommended to have, that would be great.
I'd love to jump in first, because I know I said I have 7 or so bank accounts, and I'm sure lots of people are like, whoa, that's crazy. Obviously, I'm an accountant and I'm a finance coach, so I'm all over my money like hotcakes. And I know Ellie mentioned earlier, I think it definitely depends on you and how you are. So someone else might not manage with that. That might be really overwhelming for you to have to manage that many bank accounts. I enjoy it. It's just really embarrassing to say, but I've said it, and I'm going to be quick. I mean, a lot of the accounts that I have are purely automated and the money just moves around. So I don't touch them at all because I don't need to, but I'm earning a bit of money. So just think about your goals, what you're trying to achieve, you know, where you're trying to allocate savings or day-to-day spending or bills, and think about your habits and what works for you. And talk to any of us to get some tips later. We can dive in and help you, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, so like not including like separate investments, I have one bank account because I find it really motivating to see all of my money in one place, and it stops me spending it because it's a bigger number. So I am arguing for just having one.
Yeah, I think, So I was just gonna say, I think I kind of like Crystal said, like I'm not even going to work out how many I've got. I don't know, somewhere in the middle of that, but it totally depends on what you need. Like I have to have a personal account and a business account and a joint account. So that's 3 already. And that's like the basic minimum. I think that those are the 3 main ones, but I also spend like a lot of money on credit for good reason, because I again can manage credit well, so I use it because you get rewards. It just totally depends on where you're at and how well you can manage your finances, because the last thing that anyone wants to do is to kind of get into trouble because they've forgotten that they've got a payment that's coming out from somewhere and you go into an overdraft or a payment default or anything. So just think about what makes sense for you and how much you can manage.
Yeah, so just wanted to say I agree with Rachel on this. I try to have as few as possible. So beyond my investment account and business account, I only have one. But that now I've just said beyond those, so I actually have a few. But out of choice, I only have one, and then the rest is a necessity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not even the question of how many, because I think that you shouldn't just focus on how many bank accounts you have. Because I, for example, have 3 bank accounts, but I also have 3 investment and savings accounts, so that also counts. I don't know if that counts as a bank account or not. I don't think so, but it's also a financial account where your money sits. So, obviously when you broaden the pool, there's many more options. So we have answered a lot of audience questions. And there's kind of a last question that I would really like to ask, because I know that we have a lot of people who are self-employed in our audience or who run businesses. So what would you recommend for them in terms of budgeting and savings, given that, as self-employed, your income can be a little bit more interesting as well? And because, you're also accounting for your business, what would be your tips for people who are self-employed?
So cash flow forecasting is amazing, and it's a powerful tool that isn't scary, and a lot of software that will help you do it. I think one of the biggest barriers that I break down for self-employed people, especially self-employed young women, is breaking down the stigma around being self-employed and being able to get a mortgage. I do this all the time, and quite often just jump on Zoom to like calm someone down. And a lot of people see that, like if you're in your 20s and you're thinking about starting your own business, a lot of people see that as a barrier to entry. And actually, like with a great accountant and with sort of 12 months under your belt, you'll have absolutely no problems in getting a mortgage. And I think that's something that's really, really important, because the business absolutely dictates your personal goals, and it should always be that way. And actually, if you think it's going to hinder your personal goals, that is a reason not to do it. So I think a lot of people, especially in the UK, are very, very scared of that. So I think cash flow forecasting is really important. Having a very good accountant is very important. Doing tax planning, setting up different bank accounts. So have a VAT account, put 20% of your income in that VAT account, and you'll always be fine. Get a corporation tax account and always put 19% of your tradable profits in that account, and you'll always be fine. Like just anticipating the problems and planning for them it's great. It's not to worry about.
I think I'll jump in with one suggestion here. When you mentioned the fluctuations of people's income, they have months where they're earning a lot of money and months where they don't. I think, start with your essential expenses and know how much you need to pay out every single month, and maybe look at your business finances as a need to at least cover the basics. So pay yourself maybe a monthly salary to cover that at least, instead of taking the month where you earn a lot of money and thinking, oh, I've got enough money this month to spend, and same for the lower months. So maybe if you think about a basic salary you can pay yourself to make sure you cover those, as well as having an emergency fund on the side, that's a good way of keeping some control over those fluctuations. So when you have over and beyond what you expect, put that aside, and that can help with the other months where you're a bit lower.
That's the thing. I think when you're self-employed, you almost have like more to play with. When you're employed, that's the money that you get and it's finite. Whereas when you're self-employed, you have like tax allowances that you can utilize. You can put through a director's only payroll to utilize tax-free allowances. Like there's almost more to play with and more to like make the most of when you're self-employed. And I think it's really, it's about education, and whether that's getting an accountant, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video, get it where you need it, or like find some cool Instagram accounts that talk about money. We're all here now. Like just follow them, and it's just by osmosis. You will you'll change your money mindset.
Awesome. Ellie and Sarah, you're also self-employed. So any tips from you guys in terms of budgeting, savings, and seeing money as a self-employed person?
To be honest, I would just say really don't try not to get too overwhelmed by it, because I think that it can seem overwhelming at times. And I would say just don't be afraid to ask questions. So I ask my accountant so many questions, and like I am a money person, but accounting is very different to money, and so I spend a lot of time asking very like accounting questions to my accountant, and sometimes I'm like, am I being silly here? But she's always like, no, just keep asking the questions, because just I think that's the only way that you really start to understand what's going on and getting comfortable, is just by asking and having a support system, because it is quite complicated sometimes. Like it feels hard, especially if you're not a money person at all.
I agree. So I think it comes down to having a good accountant, because it's a profession. I mean, I can't just learn it overnight, and it's so important to get the right tips. And when it comes to like being an entrepreneur and saving money, the rule of thumb would be try to save at least 10% of your salary. For an entrepreneur, try to save at least 20%, I would say, just to make sure you have money for also those months when your income is maybe a bit lower than other months. And I think.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That has been a wealth of very, very good questions and answers. I would like to thank our audience definitely for putting forward their questions and for opening up to us and sharing what is on your mind and what keeps you up at night when it comes to money, budgeting, and savings. And I would really love to thank our panelists. It has been amazing to hear all of your thoughts. I think we have learned so much during this almost 1 hour and a half. We'll definitely know how to budget now, to put aside our essentials, how to put aside our wants and money for our future self. As you could hear as well, I think a lot of times you need to find what works for you. So, it's okay to have one bank account, but it's also